So when we start talking about opening of a practice, the starting a class, so in our student manual, there's a page 128, and it says developing an opening. And then the right-hand page, page 129, is like a notebook page. So you can actually, write some ideas down if you'd like. So when you think about creating the start of a class, what comes to mind? What are the things that you think? Sorry, I have the hiccups. What are some of the things that you think? Breath work, yeah. You can teach any kind of breath work that you want at the start of practice, but that is definitely the time to teach it, especially if it's something that you want them to practice throughout. So just from a really kind of traditional place, if you're teaching like Ujjayi breath in class, then teach Ujjayi breath at the start of class and then have them use it as they move through the practice. What else?
Grounding.
Grounding, yep. Like physically and emotionally grounding the start of practice.
Quick meditation.
It's a good time for meditation.
Or set your intentions.
Definitely, it's the time to, like, if you're talking about a theme or kind of rolling with setting their own personal intention, or if there's anything that you want to kind of weave through the class that's a message, the opening of the practice is the place to do that. What else? What are some other things?
Introducing yourself.
Introducing yourself. It's a good time to do that. I would often have people like chaturanga, and then I'd be like, oh, by the way, if you didn't know me, my name's Pam. Sorry about that. Because I can't stand when I go to a class and I don't know who the teacher is. I'm like, who is that? Who taught that? Who was that person? But I'm terrible about actually, telling people who I am. Okay, what else? What else might go in the beginning as you're starting to open the class? Getting started with some yoga, yeah. So if you think about seated postures that you might add to the start of practice, what might some of those postures be?
Fire log.
Fire log.
That would be early for that though, right? You probably want to warm up a little for that.
Pretty intense. Fire log or Agni Stambhasana. It's also called double pigeon. It's this where the legs are stacked, the shins are stacked, like logs in a fire, not fires in a log. Doesn't make sense. Like fires in a log. Yeah. Bless you. All right, what else?
Some like arm, head, neck stretches.
Yeah, it's a good place to do, like, if you want to start doing some movements of the neck. There are some teachers that, this is what I will say to you as we move into this. Start thinking about what things feel good to you as a teacher, and I can guarantee you those are probably going to be your best bet for starting your practice, right? So you think about like, if I'm going to sit down and practice at home, whether you're sitting down and practicing at home or not, when you sit down and practice at home, like, what do I like to add into the start of my practice? Do I like to add in some neck movements? Am I doing shoulders? Am I Like, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And you guys know with me, I have like 3 starts. My classes, 3 different ways. And it's just based on what the class is going to be. So like, today we started on our back. Sometimes we start in child's pose. Sometimes we start seated, right? Just in like Sukhasana, which is just cross-legged position. Easy seat is the. Okay,
Warming spine too.
Hmm?
Warming up the spine.
The 6 movements of the spine. That's actually exactly what I was going to mention next. So the spine moves in 6 directions, right? It extends, which would be a back bend, which would be cow pose. It flexes, right? Which is a forward fold, essentially, which would be cat pose. It twists to the right, that's 3. It twists to the left, that's 4. It bends to the right, 5, and bends to the left, 6. So the 6 movements of the spine are just the counter actions of what your spine can do while you're sitting here, right? And because of how the spine is structured, you can move in all different directions, which is the beauty of the spine. So, where might you go from seated? So maybe you do a side bend, maybe you do a twist seated. Where would you go from there, do you think, at the start of practice? All fours is a great place to go next. Why is all fours a great place to go next?
It's easy to get to.
Easy to get to. It sets you up for lots of things, right? Easy to get to. It's easy for people to breathe in. They understand it. Come onto your hands and knees. Come to all fours, right? It's not complex. Not a lot of joint stress or strain. When might all fours be an issue for someone?
Knee problem.
Knee problems? What else? Yeah, wrists. Yeah, not necessarily hips, but definitely like knees and wrists, right? It's the things that are on the ground. So if you're working with a population where everybody has knee or wrist problems, you're probably not going to do anything on their hands. You're probably not going to do anything where they're on their knee, right? It's probably going to be you're probably teaching a different style, probably. So there's the tricky transition, right? Exactly. Right.
What would that modification be?
Well, you could pad underneath the knees.
Okay.
You come to down dog. If it's a knee issue, you can do down dog.
Okay.
If it's wrists, people can come with their forearms. They can bring blocks under their forearms. Sometimes, oftentimes, what I will have people do, which is not easier, come up onto tented fingertips. So like this. My teacher from my YTT used to call this Lady Gaga. She was like, this lady, like Lady Gaga. And I was like, how? Okay, whatever. But like, it takes a lot of strength to be in this position with your fingertips down. And it's actually really great for people that do have weaknesses in their wrists or have wrist issues. You start getting them training this. And they're building strength here. And they know it. I can't come onto my hands because I had carpal tunnel surgery. I'm like, cool, come on, fingers. And they're like, what? What does that mean? And then you show them and you have them grip the ground and you have them squeeze because they can hyperextend through their fingers as well, which people will do. You have them grip. And then they're like, never mind, I'll come onto my hands. That's really hard. That hurts. I'm like, yeah, I know. So for a 60-minute class, you're probably looking at something like a Sukhasana or some sort of a seated position where you ground them, or the place at which they're in when you ground them. So that might be child's pose. It could be seated. And you'll probably spend anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes in that place. Right? Getting them to come in, getting them to settle, getting them to breathe. And so I want you to take 2 minutes right now. And I want you to write down 5 things that you would say during that 3 to 5 minutes. You might say more than that, but what are like 5 things you want to touch on or things that you would say during that time frame to ground people and to get them ready to move into practice, whatever that looks like. So take 2 minutes and just write down like 5 things. It doesn't have to be like full sentences of all the words you'd have to say, but like make notes for your timing you. It'll take them to do the exercise. Oh, I think that might be it. I got it. There you go. Mine's probably gonna, I think they recognize your voice, so mine probably won't say any of that because it will be like, that wasn't Pam talking. Right. Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. One piece of peanut butter. I like dark chocolate. Burlington, right downtown Burlington, yeah. Mm-hmm. I took Marley when she was little to the convenience store in Merrimack. He was like, "Look there, do you want a hot chocolate?" And I was like, "Oh, it looks like Gwen has hot chocolate. I don't know what these." They like steam up and use them in truffle balls. So you can pick whatever, depending on the size, however many truffle balls. That's not how she makes the chocolate home now. Stop with doing the truffle balls. So they like drop the steamed milk, so they make milk hot with a steamer, and then pour it over. It's like steamed, like frothy steamed milk. So all right, I gave you 3 minutes. Actually, I gave you however long it took me to find the timer and then 3 minutes. So what did you guys come up with? Make sure you're loud enough. Okay. Yeah, Tammy, go ahead.
First of all, I would say, take a seat, come to your mat and take a seat. Let your body connect to the earth. Let's take a few rounds of deep breaths, or let's go through a few rounds of inhaling and exhaling. Take this time now to set an intention for yourself. It could be peace, more energy, less anger, whatever you want. And that's what I came up with.
What else? What are some other, what are the rest of yous? What the rest of yous come up with? Yous guys. Jody.
So I had to kind of like create something in my brain to keep me organized so that every time I would begin something, I would maybe change the exact wording of what I was doing, but to check with the body, the breath, and the brain so I could remember like the 3 B's.
Mm-hmm.
Then setting an intention and activating some muscles to begin warming.
Okay. What would you do for, so breath is obvious, you would teach some sort of breathing. The body is like presence to the body. What would you do for the brain?
Like asking them like what they came to the practice with, like what they walked in the door with, if something was on their mind that they could try to set an intention to leave with them.
Okay. Cool. Who else? What else you guys got?
So I wrote like I would introduce myself and I would have everyone come to a seated position, whatever's most comfortable for them. And then I said, coming into the space, setting an intention, kind of talk about, try to just focus on your breathing and forgetting about the world outside of the studio. And then I would like teach a breathing exercise to like start the class.
What else?
I'll go. Okay. I just said, hello everyone, welcome to this yoga practice. My name is Nicole and I'm going to guide you on this 1-hour journey together. Start seated on your mat with your legs crossed, and then would do a breathing exercise. And then the next thing I would go into would be just warming up the neck. One of my favorites is, bending your neck to the right, and then walking your left hands out to get more of a stretch. So, so if you bend your neck to the right, put your right hand on your head, and then you can walk your left hand fingers out to the side just to get more of a stretch. I don't know. That's kind of how I would start, with breathing and then just stretching the neck and warming up the body.
Cool. Thanks.
You may have time. I just started with, everyone come to a seated position like that. And I started with breathing exercises, finding your breath into the belly. And everyone exhale through your nose, try to flatten your stomach, emptying out all of the, as much air as possible.
Yep.
Doing that, and then setting an intention.
Okay. So breath awareness, awareness of the breath in the body, and then setting an intention. Cool. Okay.
So I'm gonna try, I didn't do my homework, so I'm gonna try to use my voices.
Okay.
So, hi everyone, class. My name's Melissa, for you guys that don't know me, and today we are going to,
Okay.
another one.
That's fine.
So an intention, I'd like everybody to find a seat on their mat, and breathing exercises to get started. Everybody breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, or out through your nose.
It's fine. Either's fine. In theory, could also be in through your nose, out through your mouth. That's fine too. Sometimes I do that a lot. Sometimes I do that a lot.
chakra.
It's fine. We'll work on the elements. That's okay. You don't have to try. Melissa's trying to combine her not getting her elements thing to me with the starting of the class. And so she's like, this isn't working.
So then I have, so ground.
I like what you're doing. I like the ideas.
Try. Too nervous. Waste time. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I like the visual of like, whatever language you end up using, but like the visual of, and I think Rebecca did that with us when we were meditating, right? The visual of the roots growing down into the earth. And yeah, it's a great time. Starter practice is a great time to do some visualization for sure. Just within like the breathing and what that looks like in your body. So cool. Thanks.
I was gonna say I can barely hear her, but she almost sounded airy.
She was definitely airy.
Yeah.
Like be airy to start like, here's my, okay guys, let's start class. And then, yeah, for sure. Good ear. Go ahead, Shay.
I thought I'd start with an introduction, the instructor, and then tell them to pick a spot and find a place to put their comfortable in, once you're settled, find a position you feel most comfortable in.
Okay.
A seated position you
Yep.
feel most comfortable in, and then start to focus on your distance and your body and your breath and what you feel you want to go into this practice. That's pretty much all.
Cool. So same kind of concept of like the body arrives, the mind arrives, you find some breath, setting an intention, kind of deciding what you want to take from the practice. And you can use the word, by the way, or you can just be like, take a moment and think about what you would like to take with you today. What are you feeling like you need more of?
So I was in a yoga class once, the teacher said, set your intention, and the person actually raised their hand and said,
What was that?
not everyone knows what that means. if
Right.
you're not in the yoga world. Set your
Even people in the yoga world don't know, by the way.
Yeah, it's a word that gets used that a lot of people, it means something, but sometimes it just doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what you're wanting in that.
Yeah.
But we start off saying like, let's get grounded, and people are like, let's get grounded.
Right. Yeah. What the hell does that, what are you talking about?
Like the world is on fire. Like if you walk into a yoga class, it's grounded. I'm like, really? Like in 2 seconds? How the hell?
Right. And you don't, and the other thing is that you don't have to necessarily always be telling people what you're doing. You can be like, come to find a seat on your yoga mat, right? Just come to sit, whatever's comfortable. And you start getting them to breathe, you start getting them to feel their body, and then you start telling them to grow roots into the earth and feel steady and strong and stable and whatever other things are the elements of earth. You don't ever have to say, we're going to ground, or this is so that you feel, grounded, or whatever other weird ass things we say in yoga.
And then somebody that's never been to yoga before thinks, they don't know what you're talking about.
Correct. Somebody that's never been to yoga before thinks that you are crazy. That is correct.
And I do get a lot of that because a lot of people come to Ariel, I think I've said this, that have never done yoga. They don't
Yep.
know anything about it. It's a place they're walking in and they're like, I think something's supposed to happen here.
But I
But
don't
I can't
actually
use
know.
a lot of terminology that you might use in a yoga because they don't know what any of
They don't have a foundation
means.
for it. Yeah. And so that's part of your job as a teacher, is to create that foundation. And so when you say, oh, we're going to do that, we're going to breathe and settle in and find allow your bones to settle into your yoga mat, allow your bones to be supported by the earth underneath you. People are like, oh, my bones. Okay. Like, let go of the holding, say you're like laying down, right? Right. Like, but I mean, like, I started you guys this morning on your backs, right? So in that scenario, you might like have them let their bones be really heavy. You might have them engage all their muscles and press everything down and then let go. And you're like, that experience is like, ooh. It's like when we did the squeeze back, squeeze. And then I was like, now sweep your arms to the sky. And you guys were like, oh, so light and easy now, because I just did all that work in the other direction, right? It's that idea that you're teaching them. This is why you're a teacher, right? You're teaching them what it means to be grounded. You're teaching them what it means to set an intention.
That's what whatever sitting posture is comfortable, because that really helps you. Like, you don't know what everyone's knees or legs problems are.
Right. Yeah.
That's really challenging everyone, knowing what, taking everyone out of a different seated posture after, but that's kind of.
Right. You might be less specific in your transition. Right. So like if you're like, come to whatever pose is comfortable, sometimes you look around the room and everybody's in the same pose. Sometimes you look around the room and you have like half the people are in, you know, hero pose, and there's somebody in full lotus, and there's somebody in, 2 people in sukhasana, and there's a couple people with like their legs out straight, and you're like, okay, nobody's, how am I getting all these people? And in that case, you be way less specific when you transition to, like, if you're bringing them to all fours, you would just say, on your next inhale, find your way to all fours. And they'll figure it out from wherever they are. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so those are good. That's a good, so thinking about like, this is how we start. This is where we begin, right? We begin of a place, you're all recognizing that it's important to get people into the space and grounded in the space. And like I said, you don't have to use that language with them, but you gotta know what you're doing, and what you're doing is grounding them. And then next, we start to introduce a little bit of movement, right? A little bit more movement. So even if you're like sitting and you're like, oh, I did a twist, and I did a side bend, and maybe I did a little bit of a forward fold and switched across my legs and folded forward again, or maybe I add a little anterior tilt, engage the back of the body, whatever the things are that you put in that beginning sequence, and you start moving into the body. Start thinking about what kind of movements would you want to have in there. So what are some options? What are some things? What did I teach this morning? We started on our back. We're doing, I said this earlier, started on our back. What was the first movement-based muscular engagement thing I asked you to do?
Anterior tilt.
Anterior tilt and bridge, right? I was like, set you up for bridge, bring the soles of the feet to the ground, anterior tilt. Then I started engaging things.
I don't know how sure. I just like with class, and I get out of the class, and what I know what I feel, but I don't know.
Right.
I don't know, man. I didn't take notes.
And then from there we came forward to all fours. We did some cat-cow, right? That's movement. So think about movement, especially the like kind of the starting movement, as the element of water, right? Kind of, so you start them in a place of earth, of grounding, whether you use the voice or not, doesn't matter. But think about it this way. Think about it like, here's grounding, steady, stable, not a whole lot of movement, maybe some engagement, not a whole lot of movement. And then you start bringing them into a little bit more movement, a little bit more flowiness. So that might be cat-cow. Sometimes I'll do like cow child's pose, right? Kind of starting slow. Sometimes that's plank, child's pose. What's the order I do that? Anterior tilt, plank, knees down, child's pose, table, cat to cow pose, and then back up and down, back to down dog, right? You could do down dog, forward to plank, bring the knees down, lower to the belly, do a cobra, press back, right? You could do any sort of like kind of movement to get the body going. Is somebody gonna say something? Okay, just checking. So starting with smaller movements, not as fiery movements, but just kind of some, think about, we said, was that before lunch or was that recently? The movements of the spine, right? The 6 movements of the spine, starting to add that in. Starting to think about in this first, so the first 5 minutes or so is like seated or child's pose or something, and you're grounding and you're getting them settled in. The next 5 to 7 minutes is a little bit more gentle movement. starting to be like, oh, this joint moves in this look. So you might be on your back, you might draw a knee into the chest, you might move the knee around to start lubricating the hip joint, right? You might hug both knees into the chest, rock a little from side to side, start to open up massage the back out a little. Usually the kind of what comes from this is we start to move to our standing position. So you might teach down dog here. You might walk the hands forward and forward fold, or walk the hands forward, walk the feet forward or the hands back and forward fold. If you're wanting to move into sun salutations, into Surya Namaskar, A or B, you want to get people standing at the top end of their mat, because that's where that flow moves from. That makes sense? I mean, you've all practiced that. If you walked your hands back to your feet, you'd be like, oh shit, how do I do this? I'm in the wrong spot. Walk to the front of the mat. I mean, that works too. You could always do that. And I've seen people like, they're cute, a teacher's cueing, and they say, walk your hands back to your feet. But what they really mean is walk your feet up to your hands, and half the class does one because they know what they really want, and half the class does the other. And then they just go, inhale, sweep the arms to the sky, exhale, fold forward, walk back out to plank. Doesn't matter which direction you're going. And then you can redo. You can have a redo. Like, let's try this again. Walk the feet forward. Yeah, or whatever the case may be. Okay. And then from there, from that place, you've got a little bit of movement, you're starting to warm up. We start to get to the next place where we're adding more heat. Right, so this is like the fire of the class. The water, the flowiness builds the fire. And what would you add in at the fire? Like what? Demands? You also said demands. You could definitely do harder poses. Yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly. You can do like complex things. You're better off starting with easier things that they're familiar with, like stepping forward to a high lunge or whatever, right? Like if you've taught that a million times, people are familiar with it. And turning on the muscles rather than trying to get fancy with things. From a classic vinyasa perspective, this is where you add in sun salutations. This is where they go. Typically in a 60-minute class, you would probably move through about 2 or 3 sun A's, maybe 2 sun B's. So sun B is the one that has a high lunge, warrior 1 in it. So it's chair pose. And then inhale to stand, exhale, fold. All of which is in your, actually in your yoga sequencing book by Mark Stevens, the entire everything that he has in here has drawings. Or they're actually pictures, but. So sun salutations are drawn out. And actually, if you look on page 149 in that book, you will see beginning class sequence.
Mhm.
Let's look at. Mark is an Ashtanga guy.
What page did you say, Pam? Sorry.
149.
Thank you.
So you will see, like, when you look at his sequences, you will see longer holds on some things, like Vrikshasana, like a tree pose. He has a 30-second hold on a tree pose on each side. Maybe you do that. But from the sun, so you have your beginning, your like ground, then you start adding in some elements of water. You start to get them to move with their breath a little bit. Then you start to add in some fire, some more challenging things like sun salutations. You guys have done those, you know what those are. Add them in. This is a great time to do that. Let me move into the standing poses.
Pam,
Yes.
did you say when we start to get into the fire, like how many minutes?
No, I did not yet.
Oh, okay.
So the fire, so moving into the warm, like once we get from like warm, so we had, 5 minutes to start, 5 to 7 for the next section. So you're now probably probably closer to 15 minutes into the practice. So the arc of the class, if you look at, I'll just tell you. The arc of a 60-minute class is you starting to build that fire around the 15-minute mark. So you're starting to get a little bit more challenging and move up. And the peak you're gonna hit, like after the halfway point. So if you say you're teaching a class from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., right? When you get to about 10:35, moving into 10:40, that's when you really want to start hitting the peak pose. So all of that time in there is a combination of fire. Could you imagine if you were like, I just had 25 minutes of fire straight. You guys would want to punch me. Probably back in the day when I didn't know better. Jane's saying that's what I used to do. But what you really want to do is you want to sprinkle in, like we talked about when we talked about elements of voice, you want to kind of sprinkle in a little bit of like, you crack a joke, you throw in a little flow, you give them a break, you bring in a child's pose, right? So you build the heat, fire, 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 and then you're like, okay, you can see the flames in their eyes now, bring them back down, right? So you bring them back down to child's pose, to down dog, to like maybe you just move them through a flow. Maybe they've been moving quick or they've been holding and squeezing. So you do the opposite of what you've been doing. So if you've been holding them and squeezing, you let go and you might be like, inhale, reach to the sky, exhale, plant the hands, down dog, plank, chaturanga, up, down, whatever. And then you might just flow through. You might do the exact same side. Step the right foot forward, reach the arms up, open up warrior two, reverse warrior, plant the hands, step it back, right? So people start to change the element of the fire. If you've been moving them through quick, like pose, 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 then a break might be like bringing them to a pyramid pose, where the front leg is straight, back leg is straight, so there's no strain on the quadricep, and you're taking a fold over that forward leg to stretch the hamstring, right? They're able to catch their breath.
So the whole process of building the heat, you're doing kind of multiple times, because like you build the heat, then you take a little break, build the heat again, right?
Yeah, it's like summer in New England, where like, I'm gonna go to the lake and I'm gonna lay in the sun, and then it gets so hot, you're like, I need to get in the water. You get in the water, you cool off, and then you come back out, it's beautiful again. Okay, I can handle this. And then it gets so hot and you're like, oh my God, and you have to jump back in. It's like that, but in a yoga class. So yeah, it's not just a steady climb. It's like we climb, and you might, like when you're teaching, the thing to think about is that you're not going back to to the very start at the 15-minute mark, right? Where you were like, okay, we're just starting to build strength again. Now you're layering on that strength. You're layering on, you've done and you've seen this happen where like the first time through, we engage the legs, like press down through the heel, pull together, like, right? And then just like reach the arms up. And I won't say really anything more than that with the arms. And then the next time we come through, I'm like, step the right foot forward, press down, pull in. But not really think about, like reach the arms, let the shoulders rise up, reach, and like hold the sky up with your arms, get longer, cool, take a big breath in, grow, and then like, fold forward. That's building heat just through the voice, right? Like reach, and you guys are like, okay, I'm reaching. And I'm like, okay, take a fold. You're like, oh, thank God, we're done with that. I don't have to be in chair pose anymore. That was chair pose this morning, right? It's like, so that's what you're looking for. You're looking to add in some like, okay, we'll cool it off a little bit. Then we'll rebuild. Then we'll cool it off a little bit. Then we'll rebuild. So that by the time you get to your peak, whatever it might be, whether it's a pose or whatever it might be in the time in the practice, it's not like you've cooled the body off so much that they now can't get to where you want them to be. Especially if one of the things you need out of them is mobility.
Can I ask you a quick question? So I'm looking on, page 149, 150, and it, for each of these poses, it says how long to stay in it, whether it's 30 seconds or a minute or 5 to 10 breaths. When you first started, were you keeping track of that, or are you just kind of winging it and kind of on average, just kind of trying to stay in a certain time frame? Or were you like counting, okay, 30 seconds and okay?
I've never.
That would be so choppy and just okay.
I've never timed anything other than in yin class, because when you hold the pigeon on one side for 5 minutes, you're going to be pissed if you only hold it for 5 breaths on the other side.
Right. Yeah.
Or maybe you won't be. Maybe you'll be like, great.
Yeah,
but
maybe thank you. Maybe they're thanking you. Okay.
Yeah, and even the outline that he has here with like 5 to 10 breaths, it's okay to stay in a pose for 2 breaths. It's okay to stay in a pose for 3 breaths. And if you're cueing, if you're telling people to do something, you're not counting anyway. You might just be like, press down, pull in, squeeze this way, hug that way, press out here, reach out there, reach the arms to the sky. Okay, take a breath in and a breath out, let it go, plant the hands, step back, right? Like and you're still gonna get, because you spent all that time cueing, giving them information. And maybe you'll have like side number 2 where you're like, okay, side number 1, I'm going to tell you a bunch of things. Side number 2, I'm not going to tell you anything. And then you're like, oh God, how long was that on side 1? All right, let's take a few breaths.
Yeah.
It's fine. Nobody's gonna not come back to your class because you did 3 breaths on one side and 5 on the other.
Yeah. My fear is more that like if it's an hour class, I'm either going to go through it and be done in 45 minutes, or I'm going to take too long and then it's going to be an hour and I'm like, oh crap, I still have all the, this stuff to do. So I guess there is a certain way where you do have to kind of time it all in to fit within that time frame. So
yeah, you start to get really good at knowing based on how you teach and like what you teach. You get really good at knowing like I know how the size of the paper, if I'm writing out a sequence, I know how many lines my sequence is on a piece of paper to fit into a certain time block. I just do, because I've been doing this so long, right? But it's okay to be like, oh my God, I'm terrified I'm gonna screw that up, because you probably will. To be quite honest, you'll be like teaching a class and you'll be like, fuck, class ends in 5 minutes. We still haven't gotten to the peak pose and I haven't brought them to the ground. And so you know what you do? You're like, okay. bring the knees down, press back to child's pose. Take a few breaths here, you swing them around, you put them in Shavasana, and you get them the hell out of there. That's what you do. And you go, well, that didn't work out the way that I thought, but that's okay. It's like being a timekeeper in anything, right? You have to kind of like keep an eye to the clock, and it's why I wear a watch. You have to keep an eye to the clock because you have to know, like, how much time do I have? What do I still have to teach, and how much time do I have left? And then what you can do is you can pull things out. So what I tend to do is I will like create, if I'm creating a new time, like if I've created a new sequence, or if I have a new time block, like I'm teaching a 2-hour workshop, say, I will create for the 2-hour workshop, and then I'll be like, and here's the things that I will repeat, and here's the things that, you know, like, oh, I taught them all these things, and then we'll flow through it 2 times. I always say that. I always say we'll flow through it 2 times, so we go through it 3 times total. I never flow through it 2 extra times, ever. Sometimes I do it once, but never have I ever in all of my years of teaching, like, done then after teaching like high lunge and then warrior 2 or whatever, have I ever been like high lunge, warrior 2, reverse side angle, plank, like, and then done the other side and then done it again. I've never done that. But I always write it into longer sequences. It's a buffer. It gives me space. It allows me to talk more when I need to.
Cool.
Because oftentimes what happens is people ask questions, right? Especially in a workshop. They're like, well, so I have a question. I'm like, okay, go ahead, ask it. Your peers hate you because you're holding them on warrior 2, but that's okay, ask it anyway. So yeah, I mean, that's a real thing. Time management can definitely be a struggle, but this is why we are writing one sequence, and this is going to be the thing that we're not doing that today, but we are going to write, and it'll start when we get together in August. You're going to be writing one sequence that you will use through the rest of the teacher training. And that's so that you can like hone it in and be like, I taught it to you guys and it only took 45 minutes. Okay, I need to add more to it, or I need to slow down, or I need to take some breaths myself. Am I speeding? You can record yourself, right? You can, even if you're like, oh, I don't like the sound of my voice, record yourself and be like, are there spaces where I'm talking really fast or I'm rushing? Or just do I feel rushed, right? You definitely have those where you're like, oh God, I felt so rushed. But the more comfortable you get at cueing and teaching, the less you feel like you're racing through. And the easier it is to be like, oh, I got plenty of time. Let's take some breaths.
So when you say we're going to be writing our sequences, so this kind of goes with what Nicole was talking about, because I'm trying to wrap my head around, like when you're planning a class, if you think back to when you started and was a beginner yoga teacher, when you're writing things down to plan a class, like what does that look like? Because as like when I did dance and stuff, I feel like I was more about writing down exactly what I did and less about like, you know, the 8 count type of thing. And so I'm trying to wrap my head around like, what does it look like when I'm writing down exactly what the plan is, and how do I match that? Because I'm the type of person where I'm gonna want to plan this class before it happens and maybe like run through it to make sure it's like, you know, in the time of the class. And so like mapping out, like, so it does help when you say, oh, this group of stuff is going to be this many minutes to this many minutes, and this stuff is, you know, and then, but, you know, like, what does it look like of just mapping out a class, basically?
Right, that's what we're doing this weekend. We're working on it. And when we get to August, when I say like in August, you're going to write your sequences, we're going to do it together. We're going to like, we're going to like work on it some more. We're going to talk about it some more. We're going to answer questions, see where the struggle is, see what's going on, see what it looks like, and then start talking about how do you want to be sequencing and what do you want to be teaching? So that you can, because August is the start of the process. So right now we're like laying the groundwork for that. And then And then we'll talk more about anatomy and stuff in July and other things. And then August is kind of like starting to go, okay, so now we're going to start actually writing the sequences. And I'm actually going to give you homework to write a section of a class this weekend. Like that's going to be part of your homework. Like, hey, here. And then you write that, you hand it in to me. So that's the other thing that happens. It's not like, here, write your sequence and now you got to teach it. I say like, write your sequence and send it to me. And then I'm going to give you feedback on it. I don't think so. No. Yeah. Yeah. So you'll be supported throughout the whole thing, and that's why I start in August, so that all the time we have in September, all the time we have together in October, which is actually a lot. We have a lot of time together in the fall. Prepares you for your final, like when you actually teach to the public. And I promise you guys that by the time you get there, you're going to be like, okay. Because the week, so I don't know the dates off the top of my head, but say it's like the first week in November. I don't know months either. First month in November. The weekend that we're together, or the 2 classes that were together before that, is also you guys teaching. So you'll teach for each other. You get feedback. We'll talk about shifts and changes and things that you can do and what makes sense. And we'll do it like collectively, like everybody will give everybody feedback. And then the next time, like then we do the whole thing again. And you've had a month or a couple of weeks or something to like kind of play around with, and you can talk to me more and talk to each other and talk to Jane and whatever, like to add in like, okay, do I have my brain wrapped around this? So it's by no means like in August, you guys should be teaching to like, you guys should be all set. You should just be teaching. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Don't worry about that. Like, we'll get there. And it is a process, and it's hard when you start out. It's like, especially if you have background in other things. If you've never done anything, like if you've never like had to create something like this before, it's like, okay, give me all the information. I'm just like, just give it to me and I'll just take it all in and, you know, make the adjustments and whatever. But if you have something else that is maybe a little bit contradictory to what you're trying to do now, it makes it even more challenging because you have to like unlearn the things and then relearn the new things, for sure. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I'm like a person in the desert. I'm like conserving my water, like it just drops. Thank you. Can I steal some of yours? Hold on. She's just being nice and giving me some water. Falling on my head. Don't worry about me, guys. Thanks. You can't have my water. Thanks anyway. I just dropped 2 drops on the floor. Some boiled water.
Pam, is it normal to, in the beginning process of being a yoga teacher, to have notes nearby? Yeah.
And there are teachers that I know that have been teaching for 20 years that still write out their sequence. It's just,
write them out because they like them so much they want to remember.
Yeah.
That great sequence I did.
Yeah, and there are some teachers, and I happen to be one of those, who is like, I'm not great at planning. I try to plan. And sometimes I'll get like all inspired and I'll be like, oh, I got a new yoga notebook and I'm gonna write out my sequences. And it's like, if you open up and look at them, it has like 4 words on the page. It's like, it's ridiculous, it's waste. But that's got nothing to do with beginner or advanced or like good or bad. That has to just do with personal, like that's just a personal preference, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I know that you think like, okay, this is the person that we're gonna focus on real life.
What did she say?
Yeah, I didn't hear.
Do you really just wing it every time? I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I will teach you guys tomorrow. We'll dive into how I sequence, which is like the chromatic sequencing.
Jody.
Which might then make it a little bit more clear how my brain works, like how, like, oh, okay, there's a structure in my brain that allows me to not have to plan, and I'll teach you. No, but I'll teach you that structure tomorrow, and you might be like, oh yes, that makes perfect sense to me. I'm going to use that, and you might be like, screw that, Pam. I'm writing shit down. You don't know what you're. I mean, you know, I don't want to sequence this way, and I'm gonna write everything down. That's totally fine. Right. You know, just go with it. Sure. Well, and I was saying to Jody with the online teaching, because I'm like, does the tech work? Is the mic okay? Is the lighting right? Is the blah, blah, blah? Like, I was writing down my sequences because, well, 2 reasons. 1, so that I would remember them with all the other things. And 2, because I was teaching and recording online multiple times during the week, and I like to teach the same thing over and over. And so I was like, oh shit, I just taught that I taught that on last Thursday. I got to teach something else.
So Matt at yoga journal, and then if you get it or you can go online, they'll have sequences.
Yeah, yoga journal.
Stumped one day.
You have this book has a ridiculous amount of sequences in it. If you're like, oh, I just like, yeah, what is he offering? You know, sequence number 6 on page 151 is called Introduction to Yoga Workshop for More Physically Fit Students. Right? So you're like, oh, I have a class of people that want to like do stuff that's a little bit more challenging. Okay. What's really interesting about this is if you flip back one page 149, and you look at Basic Introduction to Yoga Class, beginning sequences, and then you flip forward, Introduction to Yoga Workshop for More Physically Fit Students, that page is there's like, so you go, both of them are Sukhasana, basically cat-cow pose, so it's easy seat, cat-cow, child's pose, down dog, mountain pose, classical sun salutation, sun A, sun B, tree pose, warrior 2, side angle, triangle, eagle. Right, those are exactly the same. Mm-hmm. And then in the beginner class, he has Pavrita Ardha Padottanasana, like twisting, half, Padottanasana, wide-legged fold. And on page 151, he has Parsvottanasana, which is pyramid. And then basically high lunge. Right, so there's not a lot of variation. He's just in the class, it's a little bit for people that are a little bit more physically fit, he adds a couple more poses. That's it. It's like, oh, there's a pyramid pose in this one, and there's a high lunge, and wait, a Gomukhasana, cow face pose. I think those are the only poses that are different. Yeah, there's like 4 additional poses. So what I want you to take away from that is that things don't have to be different every time you teach. The beginning of your class could be the exact same. You could do like the same 10 things that gets you halfway through the class or 3/4 of the way through the class. And you could even just do them a little differently, right? You could do the same things and be like, oh, today we're going to work on This is the third time I've had hiccups since lunch. You might just say like, okay, so today I'm gonna focus on back bends. So we're gonna do a little bit more. Oh, I'm gonna add in a puppy pose. Oh, I'm gonna add in I'm gonna do a bridge and get them to really activate and turn on anterior tilt to back bend, right? Oh, I'm gonna throw in a chair pose. But otherwise things are pretty much the same. And then I'm gonna bring them to camel, but I've done all the things that I normally do anyway, right? Does that make sense? Like the way that that classes come together, it's not, you don't have to like recreate the wheel. You don't have to start over from the beginning of time and be like, every time you teach and be like, what am I doing here? How do I do this? Right? It's okay to be like, okay, seated pose, we meditate, we breathe, we do a side bend, we do a twist in each direction, cat cow, child's pose, down dog, forward fold, mountain pose, sun A, chair pose, sun B, high lunge, warrior 2, and then your class switches from there, right? And what you can do differently in those things is just different engagements. Press down in different places, pull in different places. Focus on one thing, right? If you're focusing on like the pulling in, then everything you teach focuses on pulling in. If you're focusing on pressing down, everything you teach focuses on pressing down. But it could be all the same poses, you just cue them a little different. You're like, oh, now I really want you to like lift the shoulders up and get long through the side body, right? I really want you to do that. So when I do the side bend, instead of just being like, and bend to the side, I'm gonna focus a lot on this extension so that you start to side bend and you're like, okay, there we go. Right. Yeah, that make.
I want 10 jumping jacks.
I know, we're all like, are you guys all like this too?
Yes.
It's hard to tell on Zoom.
No,
So
it's the pollen. It's awful. Like
yes. Sounds nice.
Pam, so one question. When you're going through your routine, like you just said, like when you're focusing on, planting your heels down or isometrically, pulling your feet apart, do you do that? Like, is that the one thing you do through the whole series, or like through one routine, you'll, focus on pulling your heels apart?
Gymnast or something?
Huh?
You a gymnast or something?
No,
Or a dancer? Because you keep calling it a routine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no.
It was just funny. You're like, you said that this morning about something too.
Dude, I told Jody I am not, like, stuff is not computing today. I swear it's got to be the pollen because it's just, whew.
Could definitely be the pollen.
Everybody needs some
something.
Allegro tomorrow.
I'm just curious if that was like a thing. Like, that was like a, whatever. Sorry, go ahead. So,
So just, do you do one thing or do you do multiple things through different steps of it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
You guys are going to do, if you're doing that, you're going to do one thing.
Thank you.
Like maybe when you've been teaching for like 3 years, you might do 2 things or 3 things.
Okay. Thank you.
But you want, if you're working towards something, and this is something to keep in mind, right? So like if you're like, let me back that up. When I think one thing, I think, what is one piece of education you want to give your students today, right? So I might, through an entire practice, cue anterior tilt because I want you to take that away with you. Because maybe it's going to be important for the peak pose. It doesn't mean I don't cue other things during the class. And obviously, not just like, okay, step your right foot forward, anterior tilt, right? Like I'm still like teaching you the poses as I would normally cue a pose, right? But if you're talking about really focusing on something, I would say you want to start with focusing on one thing and get it and carry it through the practice. And this is for you guys to get familiar with continuing to carry something through the practice, basically. I mean, that's the long and short of that, because it's hard. It's hard when there's a lot of moving parts, when you're like, I just wanna, what are we doing? Warrior 2. Do I have to like really tell you what to do here? Like, do I have to really focus on this thing, or you forget and you're, 7 things down and you're like, oh, I haven't mentioned that in a while. Just mention it again, that's fine. But so that's the purpose from a teaching perspective, why you're only gonna focus on like one. If there's one thing that you wanna drive home, you're gonna focus on that one thing. Could be elevation of the shoulder blade, it doesn't matter. You're good at doing this. And you can contrast teach, so this is called contrast teaching. Draw the shoulder blades up by your ears. Draw your shoulder blades down away from your ears, right? So draw your shoulder blades up by your ears. Squeeze your shoulder blades back. Maybe we do that, right? Maybe you guys have done that a whole bunch. Let's do that. Let's go that direction. Squeeze the shoulder blades back, and then round through the upper back and move the shoulder blades away from each other. Oftentimes I'll teach that when I teach protraction, because people don't know how to protract. Like if I just said to you, okay guys, protract your scapula, you'd be like, which way is that, right? It's like when I teach anterior tilt, I also teach posterior tilt. That's contrast teaching. It's teaching you the other side so you remember the thing, the side that I'm trying to teach. And sometimes we just do that naturally, right? Like we're gonna do both of those things. That's fine. But like knowing that that's what you're doing and just kind of being mindful of like, oh, I'm trying to get this thing to land. You can teach both. All right, so what are some, so we got to sun salutations, we start to move into standing poses. What are some standing poses that you would want to put in your sequence?
Forward fold.
Some standing poses you use. Sorry, go ahead.
Forward fold.
Forward fold, sure.
Mountain.
Mountain, yeah.
Are you demonstrating tree pose, or is that just comfortable? Tree pose? I don't know. Did you guys see that? She just showed us. Shay's like, hey, tree pose. Okay. Fallen tree pose, yeah. What else? What are some other standing poses that you would add in to the standing section of your practice?
I like eagle and chair.
Eagle and chair, yeah.
Warrior 2.
Warrior 2, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
This. Yeah. Well, what she just showed you. No, it's eagle. If you look at it, number 14 it says.
Oh, number 14.
Ardasana.
Side angle.
Side angle, yeah.
Did someone say tree already?
Yeah, Vrikshasana, tree.
Tree. Let's
Can you say tree pose again? Like, not tree pose, but
Vrikshasana.
Vrikshasana. Here's my question. You're gonna teach eagle. Poses based on where you're going versus just randomly going in.
Yeah.
Warrior 3.
I'm having you guys throw up poses to me so I can ask you to order them.
Oh,
So keep going.
sorry.
Warrior, what did you say, Mel? What? Which one?
Warrior 3.
Forward lunge.
Yeah.
Triangle.
Triangle.
Dancer pose.
Dancer pose. Yeah.
So are there some yoga teachers that completely don't say much Sanskrit at all?
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Okay. Well, because like I want to, but it's gonna take me time to learn.
Yep.
So remember that if that's your thing, you're gonna have potentially a classroom full of people who don't know what you're talking about.
What's she saying?
You're gonna, that's your thing, you're potentially gonna have a classroom of people that don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, like, I'm not like how she was saying last class where all they said was Sanskrit. I don't think I will ever get to that point, but I do want to, like, say some common ones, of course, but for some reason, I don't know what it is, but I can't even say it right. It takes, like, practice.
No, I know what you mean. Go ahead, Jody.
I personally hate I don't like the English way of saying upward salute. I think that sounds so stupid, but I can throw in Urdhva Hastasana and like do it and people know what to do.
Sure. What's upward salute? Standing like this with your arms to the sky.
Oh,
Yeah. Urdhva Hastasana.
That's like the dumbest name ever. Upward salute.
A lot
Like,
of the yoga studios that I go to, they will say both. If they're using a Sanskrit word, they will also use the American term. So,
Right.
Yeah, the
and
translation.
I like that because I've picked up those words, the Sanskrit words, when I've heard them because they do both.
Right, and I was just gonna, I mean, definitely, like, it gives you practice at using both, and then it gives people, you're teaching them what you're saying, right? You're teaching them a language. So you're not just like Vrikshasana, and they're like, and they're looking to see what somebody else is doing, right? You're teaching the pose anyway, so you're teaching it. You're shift your weight, blah, 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 bring your foot up, turn the knee out, whatever. Hug the legs together. Whatever the cues are that you use for that. And then you can say, like, tree pose, Vrikshasana.
but I told you guys, I know a yoga teacher that teaches only in Sanskrit.
Yeah.
But the level of student that comes to her class knows that that's the intent. What her
Sure.
training is. Yeah. And I like it. Like, I don't even think she cues a lot because they're so advanced. But that's not common.
I don't ever want to hear any of you say, don't cue a lot because my students are so advanced, because I'll disown you.
Right. Yeah. This is one particular teacher. She trained in India for 8 years. Do you know what I mean? So that's her whole, she's at a different place.
Right.
And her student knows that that's her level of teaching.
Yeah, and those students get injured because nobody tells them what to do. Don't be that teacher.
We took her.
Don't be a Karen.
My wife in the back row. I already talked about this.
Oh, yes.
Stand in the back row because you're not going to know anything. But, follow them, and it's just for us to experience what that was.
Oh my God.
Crazy.
So inclusive. Stand in the back because you're not gonna know you don't know anything. You're not allowed to be up here. It's funny. Anyway.
Interesting environment though, to watch those people practice with her, like, as a complete. It was the most like complete unit of people I've seen practice as one with her. You know what I mean? Like they move to get like a choreographed dance and just move together. It was pretty neat.
Okay. And if you're somebody, I mean, there's so many styles of yoga out there. So if you're like for instance, like Mel, you were a dancer. Like if you're like, oh, I just love like the flowy, like there's a style of yoga called inside flow that is all like choreographed, and they teach you the choreo. It's like going to a Zumba class. I think I mentioned this. It's like they teach you the choreography, and then eventually you move through it together, and it's lovely and flowy and feels good. But the people that I know that teach that have a really strong anatomy background. And so they're teaching you how to do this stuff, and then they're adding in the flow.
Yeah, and to what Pam said, she did cue, but she also did demonstrate the whole time. She could just speak the posture, but she was yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, individually, just leading the posture out the
But there are styles of yoga that do that. I mean, which is why I mentioned it. Not necessarily, but I don't know who that is, but like, Johnny Kest, his style of yoga is all about letting you free flow in the way that he says you're supposed to do it his way, because he thinks he's God. He thinks he's God. I mean, it's a thing. And it's a franchise of studios, and there's some in Massachusetts. Not Equinox. What's the other one? The gym. It's like Equinox. It's like a high-end boutique gym yoga. Now I'm like, I gotta look this up, because I have a friend that teaches there. Even though I love her, I do not like the way she teaches. Like, my brain's not working. She's not teaching there anymore. Lifetime. So Lifetime Yoga is a big chain, and that's Johnny Kest's style of yoga. So there's lots of places out there that you can go and like check out, like wacky, especially now with everything online, like search, see weird stuff online and take their weird classes. Like, and then report back like how it felt, what the experience was like for you. Because there are gonna be some that you're like, I don't know why that felt good, but that felt good. And there are gonna be others that you're like, that was the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. My body feels awful. Like, cool. Okay, so so the poses that you guys mentioned were tree pose, eagle pose, warrior 2, side angle, triangle pose, warrior 3, dancer pose, forward folds, the standing poses that we mentioned. Oh, no. What else am I missing? What else did you say that I didn't say? Tree pose, I said that.
Triangle?
Triangle pose, I got that.
Sorry.
Eagle, got that. Okay, so somebody write these down. Ready? Go through them again. As long as there's, you guys on the screen, write it down. You guys here, at least one of you needs to write it down. So tree pose, dancer pose, eagle pose, warrior 1. Oh, we said high lunge.
Whoa. You want me to write these, but you're going freaking so fast.
Okay, eagle.
Eagle. What'd you say? Eagle tree.
Dancer.
Dancer.
Warrior 2. Side angle. Triangle. High lunge. Warrior 3. Forward fold. Like standing forward fold. Did I say dancer in that? I did. Yeah, that was near the beginning. Okay, so now I want you to, you guys can discuss it, but I want you to, we can do this out loud. I'm going to take like a couple of minutes and put them in the order in which they need to go in a practice. And some of them you might be like, well, those could go at the same time. That's fine. That's fine. But like, there are some that are like, yeah, don't put that first. And there are some that are like, you know what I mean? Like, so put them in an order. If you were putting all these, you wouldn't necessarily put all these into a practice, FYI. But if you were, what order would you put them in? And it doesn't matter if there are other things that need to be in between them. Just put them in the order. You can like just number them if you want. You guys can talk about it, whatever you're, just take a couple minutes and order them up. You guys can talk about it.
What do you guys think would be going first?
I'm
Forward.
saying forward fold first.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
I vote.
And
Forward
then
fold.
high lunge.
That was it too.
Yeah, I would agree.
Triangle from here, maybe? Or would you go
You could do
Side angle.
triangle and triangle could be around the same time.
triangle and side angle?
Yeah, because
Oh,
you
guys.
from Warrior 2, you could get either way.
Right, okay.
So high lunge warrior 2.
Warrior 1, Warrior 2. Warrior 3.
Triangle and side angle. I'm sorry, I'm just having a brain block. It's just opposite sides, right? Like-
Yeah, so
Like you cartwheel one side and then, no?
then you would.
Okay.
No, a triangle, a side angle is with a bent knee and a triangle is with a straight front leg.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the same position, just with a knee bent.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
I mean, similar, I don't,
They can go back
Similar.
to back, right?
similar arms, sort of.
Yeah.
With the side angle, you're kind of reaching more like in a diagonal, whereas
Right.
a triangle, you're twisting a little.
Okay,
So we're saying what? Forward fold, high lunge, warrior,
Warrior
2.
2.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense.
So side angle,
Sure.
side angle, triangle, warrior 3.
Warrior 3. Yep.
So side angle,
How do you-
triangle,
I teach true high lunge.
warrior 3.
I'd go to tree here to kind of, I mean, I think dancer would be too much at this moment. I think you need like a little break, and tree's a little bit more.
Yes.
So tree.
So like tree, eagle, dancer.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say that. Yeah, dancer seems to be the most complex out of all of them.
Yep. And then dance. What do you think, Nicole? Are you good with all that?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
We
Tree.
steamrolled you. Sorry.
No,
Right.
we just,
You just quick. Yeah.
we said tree. I have 2 more. Oh, eagle, and then dancer.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's not like a.
Landing at the leg can be challenging.
Sure. Sure.
All right, we're good.
Or it could even be tree, dancer, eagle to come back down a little too.
I see what you're thinking.
What do you guys think?
Are you talking about?
Like-
Oh, you guys.
I'm talking to them.
So eagle could be kind of like getting out of dancer.
Dancer. Yeah. What do you, Tammy, did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
And Nicole, I was saying it could even, the last 3 could even be tree, dancer, eagle. So that there's that little build up and calm down again.
Yes. I agree. I do.
All right.
That works.
Nicole, why don't you run us through our finalized answers?
Yeah.
Well, hold on. You guys changed.
The last 2.
So you went
Eagle
from
and dancer. We swapped them. So eagle is last.
Well, it could be either way.
It could be.
Yeah.
right, because that could be like your fire, like your
Yep.
fieriest. Okay. So dancer and then
So
eagle.
on page 153, side angle is uti to parsva.
All right. Let me see if I got this all right in order.
Extended.
forward fold,
14
High
is
lunge.
Yep.
Konasana,
Warrior
which is
1,
side angle.
warrior
And 15
2,
is Trikonasana, which is triangle. What's the difference?
side angle, triangle,
Mm-hmm.
warrior 3,
Yep.
tree, dancer, eagle.
Yes.
So we did, okay. That makes sense.
Go team.
So from like your warrior.
Yeah, I think with the last two, it all depends on how you want to, if you want to bring it down or if you want to
Yeah.
end it like in
If
a
you
really
want to ramp it up.
But this is also, it doesn't like she said, we're not like teaching all this in one class. It's just like, you know, where, so
Right.
like all three of those would be like towards the end, more
Getting-
complex poses
Yeah.
versus like in the beginning, in the middle.
Right. You may not even teach all three. So, yeah.
Right.
I lunge. Warrior.
That'd be a really hard class.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'd be a lot.
Yeah.
Just
How much
wouldn't
need
time
one part
do
of
you
me
have?
want to do it because I do.
I love dancers pose. That's like one of my favorites.
I mean, I like to attempt it, but I don't get there.
That's me too. That's why I was like, it's gonna go last. It's gonna go down there.
Yeah.
I want to do it. I want to be able to do it gracefully.
One day.
I'll get there.
What do you want to do gracefully?
Dancer.
Someday. Working on that.
That's what you do.
Yes.
I just need my handy dandy strap.
That's right.
do. Namaste, Jody.
Yeah, motherfucker.
And then go down to sit there.
Cool. Okay. So I'm gonna turn your volume back up on here. I turned you guys down because they started going.
That was smart.
Peters.
Oh,
They're like, yeah, that's what we were gonna say. I'm like, volume down. What'd you guys come up with for an order? You guys.
Nicole, go for it.
Yeah.
all right. Okay. First one is forward fold, high lunge, warrior 1, warrior 2, side angle, triangle, warrior 3, tree, dancer, and then eagle.
We're pretty much the same except for like warrior.
So you did warrior. You did tree warrior 3 or warrior 3 tree.
We did first we did forward fold, the high lunge, the warrior. We didn't have a warrior one.
Yeah, we didn't say warrior 1. It's totally fine.
Warrior 2, the side angle, triangle, 3, warrior 3, dancer, then eagle.
Okay. Cool.
You know what about it? In my own practice, for me, I find that tree pose is easier than warrior 3 because the whole like making sure your hips are in the correct position and stuff. I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, that one's a little challenging, I find, for me.
Warrior 3 is a hard pose.
Yeah, especially because you can do arms out or keep them by your side, right? So like out would be more challenging.
I topple.
Yeah, it's hard to keep your hips, like half moon to me is easier than warrior 3 because of how your position needs to be in your hips and stuff. And to keep your hips in the correct warrior 3 position, I'm like, yeah, that is very challenging. My knees most like always bent in that one. So
Yeah, so here's why. There's a couple of reasons why it's so challenging. You're asking your hamstrings and your hip flexors to open for warrior 3. You're also asking your leg to engage and lift Remember we talked about that thing that when you engage the leg and you kick the heel towards the sky, the glute max turns on, but one of the things that the glute max is responsible for is external rotation of the thigh bone. So when you keep squeezing through the full range of motion, your thigh bone of the lifted leg starts to externally rotate, which is why keeping the pelvis level is a challenge. Because
Right.
leg engaged and up, right? Whereas Ardha Chandrasana, half moon pose, it's not an extension of the leg. That's not what you're doing. You're abducting. You're lifting the leg. It's a side lift. It's a groin, the inner leg line, not front and back of the leg. And you have one leg that's externally rotated, the front one. And the back leg is really internally rotated, but that's okay. We don't have to get that technical. Because Ardha Chandrasana is triangle pose. Same pose. Except you just shifted the weight forward and lifted the back leg. Now the alignment's exactly the same. I'm looking at Jody. She's like,
I'm just really thinking that one through. I'm so visual that I'm trying to picture it in my brain, and I'm like, it's not coming.
Picture what exactly?
do it. That triangle pose and half moon pose, Ardha Chandrasana, are the same pose.
Just lifted. Just the legs lifted.
Different orientation to gravity.
Right. Okay, that makes total sense. Actually.
Yeah.
I never compared the two in that, or thought of it in that way.
It's also the same pose as, remember when we were laying on our backs today and I said, draw your right leg, mostly Mel, you missed this, but draw your right leg out to the right on your back and hold it there. That's also triangle pose. One leg's externally rotated and abducted out to the side, one leg.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you can just continue to change. It's like having a little a little stick figure person that you just keep changing. You're like, now if I turn him this way and if I turn him this way and I just keep turning him around, what are all the poses we can come up with?
Or I lay him down on his back or then put him on his belly. Yep.
Yeah. Bring the hands down, it's a cartwheel. Right? Same pose upside down becomes like a paused cartwheel. Yeah, so that's the cool thing about the human body is you can do the same thing in all different relationships to gravity. So yeah, you guys are right on there. I would not always teach a class with all of those poses. I wouldn't necessarily teach like tree pose, warrior 3, dancer pose, and eagle, but that's okay because you guys took that and were like, okay, all right, how do we make these? And you were all absolutely right in that eagle comes last, and it's because it is the most challenging and there's the most things happening, right? Cool. Any questions about that? So my suggestion, outside of whether you're going to do sun salutations or sun A or sun A and sun B or not at all, that's fine as well. If you're like, I don't want those in my teaching, that's fine. But that's still the section that's flowy. Then you add in your standing poses. And from a standing pose perspective, I would say you probably want maybe 6 or so standing poses. And that would be like warrior 2, side angle, that's 2. You could layer that, you could bring them back in, you could do them again, you can do them multiple times. But I would say you don't want more than 6 or so standing poses. That doesn't include mountain pose, that's like a gimme.
Freebie.
Right. That one's free. I also wouldn't include standing forward fold in that number. I wouldn't say like, oh, I did standing forward fold, so that's 1, I can only do 5.
Yeah, that's often.
Yeah, you can do some different arm variations, right? Like, and that may or may not equal multiple. It's really up to you. But I would say from a starting out creating perspective, think about what are 6 standing poses that you would want to put in to your sequence. And then from that place, we start to move downward. So in this scenario right now, we're not talking about a peak pose. We'll talk about that tomorrow and how to sequence to that. We're just talking about like the arc of a class. So you got 6 standing poses in whatever variations or however many times you go through based on the length of your class. And I would not change this. Like if you're teaching a 60 minutes versus a 90 minutes class, I would still say like 6 variations of a standing pose, like 6 standing poses of like you might do, like I said, you might do different arm variations. You might cue different things each time you go through it, but I wouldn't just, repeat them if you need more, but I wouldn't just start throwing in other shit because people are going to get confused. They're going to be like, what are we doing? What is this? I'm so confused. Where are we supposed to be? And nobody wants that.
So with this homework assignment, are we supposed to add in the different, like, are we supposed to be queuing in the other things to get you from one place to another? Or are we just picking the 6, kind of like we just did?
I like how you just decided that was homework.
Oh, I thought it was. I'm so sorry.
It's so funny. It's totally fine. Oh, we haven't got there
I'm
yet.
like, what homework? I don't.
Like we're still looking at the structure. I'll give you your homework soon, I promise.
Okay.
In the structure of what you're creating, you want to think about adding in 6 standing poses. Okay. So that would be like high lunge, warrior 2, side angle, triangle, pyramid pose, maybe something else, and like Ardha Chandrasana, right? Like, and then you just layer them in different, like, oh, we did high lunge a couple times, and oh, I added in a twist to my high lunge, and oh, I did side angle, and then I like reversed warrior. Like, that's okay, because I wanted a little flow. All right, that can still be included in that side angle space. I actually would love for you to be creative with what are the different things that I could do in Warrior 2? With like Warrior 2 legs, what are the different things that I could create here? What could I be doing with the arms differently? And not like from an intentional place. Like, oh, I could lengthen the side body here. Oh, I could fold inside here and get a little, like, dig into the front hip a little or whatever, right? I would love to see that because that's the idea there is keeping it simple. Your sequences don't have to be ridiculously complex.
I have like a couple that's already come to mind.
Cool. From a classic perspective, after standing poses, after you might throw in a standing balance, you don't have to, but standing balance is one of those things that gets thrown in. Usually what gets put in after that, you come down to the ground and you add in some back bends. You might have been back bending during class. You might have been like doing up dog. You might have like done some cobras at the start. All that's fine. This is the place where maybe you add in a bridge. Maybe you add in like a shalabhasana, like a locust pose. You're strengthening the back of the body. Just kind of turning on the back body again. And then maybe adding in things like happy baby, a spine twist, any of that kind of stuff. things that are a little bit more active. So this might be where you add in an active pigeon. Active pigeon. And maybe you come into some seated poses here, like after you've had a little bit of active, right? So back bends and that kind of stuff, they're active. You could add in an active pigeon. You could add in an active, like seated hip opener. You can add in a twist, a seated twist, a seated fold. This all depends on the amount of time you have. The seated, so back bends is probably a couple of minutes, maybe 3 to 5, if there's more, if you really want like more in there. And then coming into some seated postures, you're also talking about 5 minutes. Then you come back onto your back. If there's any final things you want to add in, this might be where you add in a happy baby. Knees to the chest. You might add in another spinal twist, something that's a little bit more relaxed. If your other one was a little bit more active. And then Shavasana. For a 60-minute class, you want your Shavasana to be at least 7 minutes. 75-minute class, I would say 10 minutes. 90-minute class, I would say 15. If you come on a yoga retreat with me, you could spend, especially if it's the morning practice where I've just kicked your ass, you could spend 20, 25 minutes in Shavasana, like propped up with a bunch of things while I go to the kitchen and see what they're cooking. Usually that's what happens. Like lead people in, blah, blah. Then I'm like, oh, I gotta go into the bathroom. And then I come back. I'm like, oh, that was long enough. Yeah. Pam, yeah.
August, right?
Yes. Well, it is Vermont. So, I mean, there's probably like the neighbor knows how to birth a child or something. Catch a baby. Yeah, and then after Shavasana, you're slowly bringing them out. So what are some of the things you want to tune into in like bringing people out of Shavasana? What do you think?
Starting to move the body.
Yeah, so I would start with the breath because it's more subtle, right? So when we looked at the koshas, the pranayama is the next kosha in from the physical, right? Pranamaya, I guess, right? So the breath is like a little bit more subtle, the body's a little bit more gross. So not like disgusting, like just tangible. So starting with the breath is a good way to kind of bring people back, especially because sometimes, especially if you leave people in longer Shavasanas and you really guide them in, sometimes they're deep and they've got to like kind of climb their way back out. And so just kind of hearing your voice, they're like, oh, there's that voice talking to me. Wah, wah, wah.
Charlie Brown.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be, so the thing to remember when you're bringing people out of Shavasana is imagine that everybody in your room has just fallen into a sound sleep. And now you're trying to awaken them gently, right? So you don't have to be like, do all these hard things. You be like, just become aware. And you'll have people that like you say, bring your awareness to your breath. And they're like, hug their knees into the chest and they start rocking and they're ready. They're sitting up. 10 seconds later, they're sitting up and you're like, whatever. There's always going to be those people. Yeah, some people just get fidgety, especially in longer Shavasanas. And some people like melt into them. And that will tell you a lot about somebody's personality. A lot. Or how they are that day. Sometimes it's just a daily thing. Yeah. Right. And what I find with that, yeah. So Jane's, if you guys couldn't hear Jane, so what she was saying was just like sometimes if people are in longer shavasanas, you're giving them time to to absorb and process what's just happened in practice or in their life. And so that might be rising. And so they're like, get me the hell out of here. And that's okay. That's part of it. So like if you have somebody that's like super fidgety leaving class, that's fine. Like that's part of holding space. You just kind of like, yeah, cool, okay. It does tend to, people that kind of tend to look at their shit on a regular basis tend to not have that. Like the shit still arises, but they know how to deal with it, process it, breathe through it, manage it, or just be like, oh, that's interesting. That's what came up today.
Or sometimes,
right.
Why is that still creeping?
Yeah, why is that still a thing? People that tend to like, I always say that people that are trying to outrun their demons, when they get into Shavasana, their demons catch up with them. It happens.
So not everyone has the same.
Yeah. And you'll see it.
About the fabric hammocks is people do tend to drive in more because they feel
safe. Yeah, it's like being in the hammock. It's like somebody's holding you.
Schools, like I never Shavasana with a like I always just lay out. That's it. I don't want even the temperature. But under the fabrics, you'll
Like a cocoon. Being in the fabric in an area class is like being in a cocoon.
I've had people pick area on the adult event the mat to encourage Shavasana this morning because that's
I feel claustrophobic.
yeah.
I like Shavasana, try to Shavasana in the hammock. I'm the same way in the hammock in my backyard. So I'm like, oh, I can't breathe. This thing's like choking the life out of me. Yeah. Yeah. There'll be all sorts of things that will happen for all sorts of different reasons. And I'll give you an example. I was on a yoga retreat in Nicaragua. I keep saying a few years ago.
More than that.
It was the year I turned 40. I'll be 44 this year. So, yeah. So, I was the entire practice was like, essentially it was focused around the throat chakra. It was all the like, press the head back, turn from the back of the head, like all that kind of stuff. It was all sorts of things we did, but that was one of the big focuses of the practice. Air, back bends, we did all sorts of stuff. And I get to the end of practice and I come to lay in Shavasana. And I will tell you that during my 200-hour teacher training, there was 35 people in the class and 34 people cried during the yoga teacher training. Not me. And I was like, what is wrong with these people? Why are people crying in yoga? I don't understand. It's crazy. Whatever. So I like it just never, that's not like I'm gonna cry in my yoga mat. And so I laid in Shavasana after this back bending, heart opening, throat chakra opening class. And in this like sunny, beautiful, breezy Nicaragua and like an open, there's a roof, but like an open air studio. And I'm laying on my back and all of a sudden it just felt like an elephant or something like landed on my chest and I couldn't breathe. And I rolled to my side and started sobbing. And I was like, what the fuck? Like that was my reaction. I was like, what is going on? And I'm like curled in a ball. Like I didn't know how to I'm like, how do I get this thing off of me? And in retrospect, thinking about it after the fact, I was like, it was as if, from an elemental standpoint, it was as if I had floated and then all the crap in the world landed on my chest and dropped me back to the ground. And for the remainder of the day, like the only way, like Matt actually was with my teacher, Matt, he like came and like laid on me first, like like curled around me and just like squeezed me. And then he like, whatever, rubbed the back of my head, like got me breathing again. Because I couldn't breathe. I was like hyperventilating.
From yoga.
From yoga.
This sounds like plant medicine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds like what?
Plant
Plant medicine.
medicine. I know. Like, I was like, this is crazy. Like, were you taking some, what was that, peyote in there? Like, what's going on? But prior to this, for like the entirety of my adult life as a social worker therapist, I had this pain between my left shoulder blade and my spine. And I've like gone to massage for years, and my massage therapist is always like, this thing never goes away. I don't know how to get rid of this. And worked on and done all these things, got on the chiropractor, but all these people working on trying to help me figure this stupid thing out. And it's never gone away. And I got up after sobbing, regrounding and like kind of figuring out, and walked on the beach and I like grounded. And I was like, that's weird. That pain's gone.
So I'm just gonna say, and it's not a point one way about it. Nothing really question. Previous YTT, I think every single person cried at least 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And it's maybe because you guys aren't together yet as much and haven't drawn on each other yet as much. But it's very, very common, especially in communities, that you become this space where you really actually start moving, like you can practice today, and you start practicing with the same people over and over and over again. No one else is in the space. Sometimes by the time you get to that space, things like that, oh, it just happens. Like the process of, you don't start going as much, but you trust the circle. Like my YTT circles before and at the beginning and the end. Just different environments, so it's very common.
We started that way, and then coronavirus showed up.
Yeah.
So.
It's like hopefully we all can spend some, we don't get back to spending
Right.
time together again to have that experience. And honestly, the experience you guys are having going through coronavirus is just as bonding as
Just as stressful
Yeah.
as being in a room together. Yeah.
Dealing with almost
There is a,
faithful, but just for it's not very common for people to even have a life-changing moment that they can remember.
yeah.
They become somebody else. Yeah.
We had a mom in the last training who, her daughter died in a car accident like a handful of years ago. And she was talking about like the struggle, and it was like her daughter's anniversary and practicing yoga at home by herself. And she's like, I was in child's pose and I just started sobbing, and like everything, like I just had this like whatever, this felt really connected to her daughter and all this stuff that happens in yoga, right? There's all sorts of things that happen in yoga that like are regular things. I don't want to say normal, but like it's common for people to cry in yoga. It's common for people to fall apart. It's common for people to get angry, right? So like it's common for people to experience emotions and have those emotions come out in a yoga practice. And so part of the role of the teacher is being able to hold space for that. So, you might be like, I'm super uncomfortable with people crying, and then there's people crying in my yoga class. But maybe like people crying is not a thing for you, but when people get mad, it's a trigger, right? And you're like, oh my God, like I've been triggered by this person, and this person got up, they were so mad, they like grabbed their stuff and they just left, and they were like, and I didn't know what to do because they were so upset. They were so angry. Yeah, that's gonna happen. People are gonna experience emotions, and your job is just to hold space for them. That's it. Your job is to be like, cool, yeah.
You don't confront them though, right? Like I can't, no, okay.
No, and so like when people are crying, and are you talking about the angry person or the crying person?
Well, the crying person,
Yeah.
I was speaking about.
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily confront someone and be like, whatever, like, I need to fix this. Because as a therapist, I'm like, I recognize the benefit of crying.
Yeah.
But sometimes what I will do, especially if somebody seems like, not just like I have tears running on my face, but like somebody's like sobbing.
Yeah.
I will like take some props. I'll take a bolster, I'll take some blankets, and I just come and like lay them on them, right? I like drape them over them, or like take a stack of blankets and put it over their pelvis just to help them reground. Right, I worked at a studio that had sandbags because of the stuff that she taught. And so I had one girl that was like always anxious, and she's like airy as all out get out. But when she'd get to Shavasana, and she'd be like, oh my gosh, Shavasana is so hard. I just feel like it just makes me anxious, and like not because of anything bad, just like I feel like I'm floating and I can't. And I'm like, cool. And I just like started dropping. I was like, here, let's put a sandbag on your pelvis. And she was like,
That's
oh my
a great idea.
Yeah, weighted blankets, any of that kind of stuff, right? Just some sort of like weight that helps to draw them back down into the earth. That can be super helpful.
If any of you guys know when it comes to so she did a YTT here before Pam with Christina that you guys will meet. There's something about Luann that you wouldn't think in her practicum that she had this, I don't know what the hell happened, but we're all laying in Shavasana, and you often hear me talk about my friend Kale, who's a big fitness runner up north, who's a teacher. He was a trainer. We'd lay here. And then in class, like we didn't burst into tears, but we both looked at each other. Both each had one tear rolling down, and we were like, wow.
Yeah.
I don't know what just happened. I didn't necessarily fall for nothing, but something about that moment, was it a sequence that opened something?
Sure, it could be anything.
Said, but both of us had the same simple little tears coming down our eyes. Like, obviously, whatever she did affected more than one person.
Right.
And people that don't normally cry, right? So we're like, wow, that was cool.
Right.
Not that I want it to happen every time, but.
And you might be the teacher that makes everybody cry. That's okay.
That happened to me. It happened to me last Thursday, and I was so floored. I was just like, and of course I'm an asshole. It was my friend. So I'm like, oh, are you wiping your eye because you're so relaxed and you're so tired? And she's like, I'm crying. I'm like, I'm so sorry.
Right. Yep. And that'll happen. That'll definitely happen. You'll definitely have people in your class cry.
I was really glad that it was my friend that happened first.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, now I understand what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, Thursday. Yeah, so also the psoas, that muscle that you guys love so much. The psoas, there is some, and Christina will talk about this when she talks about the yamas and niyamas a little bit. There is some connection between the formation of the strength in the iliopsoas, the psoas muscles, and our early life experiences, right? Because it's the time frame when those muscles are developing as we're learning to crawl and walk. And so trauma can be stored there. So an aerial doing a hip hang can target that. Right?
Maybe that's why I love Ariel so much, because I got a lot of shit.
So, have you figured out a date when she's coming?
Have you talked to Christina yet about a date?
No, but I tried to. I reached out to them.
Jane and I just had a conversation yesterday. She wanted to know. She asked me like, "Are there any days you don't want her here?" And I was like, "Not the last 2 weekends." Sooner would be better.
So my other question's gonna be, are you guys prepared to come into the studio when she comes? 'Cause being online isn't gonna work.
Yeah, that's not gonna work for her.
I don't know what the message.
For what she's doing.
I mean, is it possible to just meet outside for that aspect of it too, or?
When is she coming in?
We don't know. We've got to
Yeah.
find that out from her availability.
Like, I was excited. I thought the numbers were getting better. And then like with everything that's going on, I don't know what's happening. So it depends on, I guess, what's happening that week.
Yeah, I don't want to say, oh yeah, I'm good, and then everything feels like it changes, and then I don't feel good.
Okay.
That's why I think like maybe meeting outside might be the compromise for everyone, so nobody has to wear a mask all day either. I know nobody.
I mean, if
wants
we
to
could
do
do Greeley again, that was fabulous. I
Yeah.
don't know if everyone else agrees. That was really nice.
Life, and for some reason, when you say Greeley Park, I can't picture where that is.
Oh, like, I don't even know how to.
No,
Is
so
it the one on Concord Street?
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
With the pavilion.
Okay.
We practice under the pavilion.
where
That
the
was cool.
The thing that looks like a concert should
Yeah.
be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stage.
Okay. So where do you park?
just on this parking on the
Yep.
street right there up on Concord Street, or you can come down behind that and park. There's parking down. There's streets that come down around it as well. You can park down there.
Yeah.
It's not metered.
No, it's all free and it's there's a bunch of options.
Yeah, Mel, I haven't been there in years, and I was worried about the parking, and it was no problem.
So there's a road that you go.
Yeah, there is. And you can
And-
park right on the main street. There was like no cars this morning. We were basically the only ones, so.
Yeah, there was nobody there yet when we got there. I was like, 1, 2, 3. Oh, look, there's 3 of us here. There's 3 cars.
Okay.
I missed some of that. Are we doing something different tomorrow?
No, we were just talking about when we were talking about Christina coming, Jane's teacher, Christina. This is hiccups again. I got hiccups again. And what she does when she does the yamas and niyamas is it requires us all being together. So Jane was just ready for that. And so that it started with the well, if we could maybe we could plan on doing something outside. And then it was like, where's Greeley Park? Where do we park? That's all.
Okay. I got all that part. Yeah. Okay.
So
Cool.
Any questions about how we started walking through the sequencing today? We'll do more sequencing tomorrow. I just want to say it's not nearly as complex as you think it is. It's really, really straightforward. And so I'm going to give you some practice at it. I would like you to create half of a class.
What?
So from we talked about what would you do for an opening? What does that look like? Seated poses, sun salutations, blah, blah, blah. Once you get through sun salutations, you're going to start doing some standing poses, and then you're going to work through to getting down to the ground, seated, back bend seated, on the ground, on your back, and then Shavasana. I want you to write that second half of the class. We did a lot of the first part together. So I want you to write from the first standing pose after whatever. We'll just assume you do sun salutations. So what are to be essentially your 6 standing poses? You want at least 1 seated pose, actual seated pose. And it can have multiple variations. You can add more than that, but you want at least 1. You want to add in some sort of a back bend, some sort of a spine twist. Yes, after. So do the 6 standing poses, whatever those look like. And then the wrap down is adding in a back bend, adding in a twist, adding in a seated pose.
And are we supposed to cue it the way we would actually?
I want you to make a list. I want you to write down what you would teach.
Oh, fine. Great.
Yeah. So this is the process of writing the sequence, right? We'll work on what are you going to say and how you're going to say it.
Perfect.
A little
So
bit further.
6 standing, 1 or more seated, at least 1 back bend, 1 spine twist, and then anything else.
And then whatever else you want to add in before Shavasana.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Let's go for tomorrow. Yeah, actually, let's try to do it for tomorrow. And the reason that I say that, you don't have to turn it into me, we'll talk about it tomorrow, is because tomorrow I'm going to teach you another variation on sequencing. So you'll have a couple of options. Any questions, thoughts, requests, requirements, things that you want to share, magical moments, whatever?
I have a question about pigeon.
Okay.
I was trying to teach my cousin how to do pigeon, and she couldn't get her shin to be like more of a parallel situation. So she was just like, she was a knee, like her knee was like bent. Is that okay as long as she's karate chopping through the pinky toe to protect the knee?
Yeah, so karate chopping through the pinky toe activates the muscles of the shin. Pressing down through the knee activates the glutes. Both of those together protect the knee. So having from the bottom, below the knee and above the knee, engaged protects the knee.
So not necessarily that they can't have, like, it doesn't matter the angle of the knee, just the activation of the muscle is what's important.
Yeah, so what you really mean is it doesn't matter the angle of the shin bone in relation to the thigh bone.
Okay. Thank you. I like that.
Does not matter. What does matter is that they're feeling the sensation in the outer hip on that front leg.
And would they also be feeling a sensation on, if you had your right leg forward, would they also be feeling it in the hip flexor of the backward leg?
Most likely. Not everybody, but yeah, a lot of people will.
Okay.
I mean, that's part of the pose, right? If your hip flexors are super open, you might not, but probably for your cousin who's like the relationship between the shin bone and the thigh bone is like they're so close together, and he's so in so much flexion that she probably would be feeling a lot of sensation in the hip flexor as well.
She would or would not?
Yeah, she probably would.
Okay.
Okay. Any other things? That's fine. I'm just wrapping.
I honestly feel really bad for missing this morning. It wasn't, I honestly, if it was completely my decision, I would have waited until next weekend, my original date that I made to tour this place. But my mom insisted to do this weekend.
Is there anybody else here tonight?
So I feel really bad.
You know, well, I knew that when
tomorrow.
You're like, my mom's saying. I'm like, it's fine.
I honestly, I was like, Mom, I made a financial commitment, not even just financial, but like mental and financial commitment to yoga. Like, I can't miss it. But she's like, yeah. What did she say?
She's like, she just Alex pulls out of her bag. She's like, oh, I have a bottle of water in here. I'm totally fine. I'm good. Thank you. Yeah, it's more like the talking thing. As long as I'm stop talking. As long as I shut up eventually, you know. That's funny. Okay, have a good night.
I just hope you know that like it wasn't my intention.
I knew based on what you were saying in your message, and that's why I was like, don't worry about it. Yeah, whatever. Whatever needs to happen. How was it? Did you like it?
I love it.
What is it? Where is it?
Allrose Farm in Greenfield.
Cool.
Yes. So what sucks right now, which I know my parents are iffy about, is right now companies aren't doing wedding insurance because of COVID. They're so under that they're not even providing it right now. So like, and this is a small company, like it's just this couple that owns it. So they're like, when you sign the contract and you put your deposit down, like there is no cancellation. Like you have, like there's no getting your money back. Just in case something happens, we can postpone it. We'll work with you, but we're gonna go under as a small business. Like we need people to understand that there is no like refund. So I think it kind of freaked everyone out a little bit, but I mean, for me, I'm like,
You're like, why are you freaking out? Do you think I'm gonna like bail? You think I'm like, I'm just gonna cancel?
yeah. Like I absolutely love this place. I think it's just, my parents are, they're gonna want to talk about it. So that's a huge
Parents like that.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, so if there's nothing else, if you guys have questions, let me know. We will meet tomorrow at 8:30 again at Gurley Park. And
yeah.
same kind of thing. We'll spend a couple hours there, do some talking, do some yogaing, do some talking, and then head back here to do some more sequencing, or here Zoom, or here studio, whichever, to do some sequencing. Okay. Cool.
Sounds like a plan.
August 17th. That's actually, the yoga retreat is the 13th through the 16th. That would be, maybe, like, she's not making that. She's like, August, that might be too close to giving birth. Like, it's the day before.
Mel, I keep meaning to ask you, do you have an aunt named Cindy?
Yes, why?
That's my
sister.
I used to work with her.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, that's my mom's sister.
Yep.
Blonde hair.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
How is she these days? Is she good? Got it.
Her kids, so my cousins were drug addicts, and she basically raised her granddaughter for the first like 5-6 years of her life.
Oh.
So that's like that family. But now my cousins are clean and stable, thank goodness. But my aunt's been through a lot. So, but that's funny that you used to work with her, that you know her.
Yep.
Yeah. No, she's awesome. She's been through a lot. My aunt and uncle. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, she's
But
better now.
at the I always